On a cold winter night in the Hesteland Valley of Norway, something impossible lights up the darkness. A brilliant sphere of light, sometimes white, sometimes yellow, sometimes red, hovers silently above the frozen landscape. It might stay for seconds. It might stay for hours. And then, without warning, it simply vanishes. This isn't a once-in-a-lifetime event. It's been happening here, in this remote Norwegian valley, consistently since at least the 1930s. Hundreds of people have seen it. Scientists have measured it. Cameras have captured it. And yet, nobody can explain what it actually is. The Hesteland lights are just one example of a phenomenon that appears across our planet, mysterious lights that have baffled observers for centuries. These aren't fleeting glimpses that can be easily dismissed. These are well-documented, recurring events that challenge everything we think we know about the natural world. Let me take you to West Texas, to a stretch of empty highway between Marfa and Alpine. If you pull over on a clear night and look toward the Chinati Mountains, you might see them. The Marfa lights, glowing orbs that appear on the horizon, dancing, splitting apart, merging back together. They've been reported here since the 1880s, when a young cowhand named Robert Ellison first spotted them and thought they were Apache campfires. But when he rode out to investigate, he found nothing. No fires, no people. Nothing that could explain what he'd seen. The locals in Marfa have built a viewing platform now. Thousands of tourists come every year hoping to catch a glimpse. And many of them do. These lights don't discriminate. They appear for skeptics and believers alike, performing their silent light show with no regard for who's watching or what they think. But here's what makes these phenomena truly fascinating. They're not random. They're not scattered reports from unreliable witnesses. These are geographically specific, repeating events that occur in the same locations over decades, sometimes centuries. Take the Min Min lights of Australia. Indigenous Australians have known about them for thousands of years, incorporated them into their stories and their understanding of the land. European settlers encountered them in the outback and were absolutely terrified. The lights would appear in the distance, glowing with an eerie luminescence. Sometimes they'd seem to follow travelers, move toward them, chase them, even. In 1838, a surveyor named Thomas Mitchell documented strange lights following his expedition through western Queensland. His descriptions match perfectly with modern sightings. The same phenomenon, unchanged, across nearly 2 centuries. What many don't know is that these aren't just campfire stories or folklore. Serious scientific research has been conducted on these lights, particularly in Hesteland. In 1984, a group of researchers called Project Hesteland set up sophisticated monitoring equipment in the valley. Cameras, radar, spectrum analyzers, magnetometers. They wanted hard data, and they got it. The instruments detected the lights, measured them, recorded their electromagnetic signatures. The lights showed up on multiple independent systems simultaneously. This wasn't mass hallucination. This wasn't swamp gas or car headlights. Something real was happening, something that interacted with the physical world in measurable ways. The lights in Hesteland typically appear between 15 and 20 times per year now, though in the early 1980s they were appearing multiple times per week. They move in ways that seem to defy conventional physics. They accelerate instantly. They change direction without slowing down. They pulse and shift colors. Some hover motionless. Others shoot across the sky at incredible speeds. Scientists have proposed theories, of course. They always do. Some suggest the lights are the result of piezoelectric effects, where tectonic stress on certain types of rock generates electrical charges. The Hesteland Valley does sit above a geological fault line, and the surrounding rock contains minerals that could theoretically produce such effects. But here's the problem with that theory. It doesn't explain the light's behavior. Piezoelectric effects should be random, brief, and tied directly to seismic activity. The Hessdalen lights are none of those things. They appear when there's no seismic activity. They last far longer than any known piezoelectric discharge. And they move with what appears to be purpose or pattern. Other researchers have suggested combustion of gases, perhaps radon or other radioactive elements escaping from the ground and somehow igniting in the atmosphere. But this doesn't hold up either. The lights appear in all weather conditions, including heavy rain and snow. They don't behave like any known combustion phenomenon. And extensive testing in areas where the lights appear hasn't found elevated levels of the gases that would be necessary. The reality is that every conventional explanation falls short. Each theory can account for one or two characteristics of these lights, but none can explain the complete picture. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces come from different boxes entirely. Let's go back to Marfa for a moment. Skeptics have long claimed that the Marfa lights are simply car headlights from Highway 67, which runs through the area. And yes, some lights that people see from the viewing platform probably are car headlights. But this explanation crumbles when you consider the historical record. The lights were being reported decades before automobiles existed in the region. Before electricity. Before anything that could produce the kind of illumination people were describing. A geologist named Edson Hendricks studied the Marfa lights extensively in the 1970s and 80s. He photographed them, tracked their movements, documented their appearances over hundreds of hours of observation. His conclusion? Some of what people see might be mundane, but some of it absolutely is not. He documented lights that appeared above the mountains, moved in ways inconsistent with vehicles, and displayed characteristics that couldn't be explained by reflection or atmospheric effects. The same pattern emerges everywhere these lights appear. Initial skepticism, followed by investigation, followed by the uncomfortable realization that conventional explanations simply don't work. In Australia, the Min lights have been studied by scientists from multiple universities. They've proposed that the lights might be a form of atmospheric optical illusion called a fata morgana, a type of complex mirage caused by temperature inversions. And certainly, mirages do occur in the Australian outback. But witnesses describe the Min lights appearing on cold, clear nights when temperature inversions are unlikely. They describe the lights at close range, sometimes just meters away. Mirages can't explain these encounters. What makes these phenomena even more intriguing is their consistency across different cultures and locations. The descriptions remain remarkably similar whether you're reading a report from Norway, Texas, or the Australian outback. Glowing spheres or elongated lights. Colors that shift between white, yellow, red, and sometimes blue. Movement that seems intelligent or purposeful. Sudden appearances and disappearances. Duration ranging from seconds to hours. If these were simply misidentifications of known phenomena, you'd expect much more variation in the reports. You'd expect the descriptions to match whatever conventional sources of light were available in each location. But they don't. The reports maintain an eerie similarity despite being separated by thousands of miles in completely different environments. Project Hessdalen continues to this day, making it one of the longest-running scientific studies of anomalous phenomena in history. The valley now has permanent monitoring stations equipped with automated cameras and sensors that operate around the clock. When the lights appear, the systems capture them from multiple angles simultaneously. In 2007, Italian researchers joined the project and brought even more sophisticated equipment. They used optical spectrum analysis to determine what the lights were made of, or at least what was producing them. The results were puzzling. The spectrum didn't match any known light source. Not combustion, not plasma, not any artificial light. It was something else, something that didn't fit into existing categories. Some of the researchers began to suspect they were looking at a form of plasma, but not like any plasma that's been created in laboratories. Natural plasma is extremely rare on Earth outside of lightning strikes. It requires enormous energy to form and typically only exists for fractions of a second. The Hestellan lights, if they are plasma, are somehow stable, long-lasting, and forming without any obvious energy source. One researcher, Unexplained, who has been studying the lights since the 1980s, has proposed that they might be the result of a natural battery effect. The valley's unique geology, with metallic minerals on one side and sulfurous compounds on the other, separated by a river, could theoretically create the conditions for electrical current to flow. This current might somehow generate the lights. But even Strand admits this is speculation. The energy levels required don't match what such a natural battery could produce. What's particularly frustrating for researchers is that the lights seem almost deliberately elusive. They appear unpredictably. They can't be triggered or controlled. You can't study them in a laboratory. You can only wait and hope they show up, then try to gather as much data as possible before they vanish. In Marfa, a physics professor named Carl Stephan analyzed the various theories and concluded that while some sightings definitely have mundane explanations, a core group of observations remained genuinely mysterious. He noted that the lights sometimes appear in front of visible landmarks, ruling out distant sources. They sometimes cast shadows, indicating a real light source at a specific location. And they behave in ways that no combination of known phenomena can adequately explain. The indigenous Australian perspective on the Min Min lights offers an interesting contrast to the scientific approach. Rather than seeking a reductionist explanation, traditional stories accept the lights as part of the natural world, entities with their own existence and purpose. Some stories describe them as spirits. Others as manifestations of the land itself. Modern Aboriginal people who've encountered the lights often describe them with a mix of reverence and caution, something to be respected rather than captured or explained. There's something almost humbling about these phenomena. We live in an age where we've mapped the human genome, landed robots on Mars, and peered back to the birth of the universe. We've explained so much. And yet these simple lights, appearing in remote valleys and deserts, remain beyond our understanding. It's not for lack of trying. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent on research. Some of the best scientific minds have turned their attention to these lights. The data collected fills archives. And still, the fundamental question remains unanswered. What are they? Some researchers have begun to wonder if we're asking the wrong questions. Perhaps these lights aren't a single phenomenon that can be explained by a single cause. Perhaps each location has its own unique combination of factors that produce similar effects. The Hestellan lights might have a completely different origin than the Marfa lights, which might be entirely unrelated to the Min Min lights. They might just appear similar to human observers. But that doesn't feel quite right either. The similarities are too specific, too consistent. It's more likely that we're dealing with a natural phenomenon that occurs under certain rare conditions, conditions that happen to exist in these scattered locations around the world. But what those conditions are, exactly, remains a mystery. There's also the uncomfortable possibility that these lights represent something genuinely unknown to science. Not aliens or supernatural forces, but a natural phenomenon that doesn't fit into our current understanding of physics and chemistry. Something that occurs at the edges of what's possible in our universe. Something rare enough that we haven't yet figured out how to reproduce or fully study it. The very existence of these lights suggests there are gaps in our knowledge, blank spaces on the map of what we understand about the physical world. The lights continue to appear. In Norway, the automated cameras capture them several times a year. In Texas, tourists gather at the viewing platform, hoping for a glimpse. In Australia, travelers still report strange lights following them through the outback. The phenomenon hasn't stopped just because we can't explain it. Nature doesn't care about our theories or our confusion. What we're left with is a genuine mystery in the truest sense of the word. Not a mystery because we lack information, we have plenty of data. Not a mystery because witnesses are unreliable, the lights have been recorded by instruments. It's a mystery because the phenomenon itself doesn't fit into the categories we've created to understand the world. These lights force us to confront the limits of human knowledge. They remind us that despite all our advances, despite all our technology and scientific understanding, there are still things happening on this planet that we simply cannot explain. Not yet, anyway. Maybe not ever. The Hessdalen lights will glow again tonight, or tomorrow, or next week. Someone in Marfa will pull over on that stretch of highway and see something dancing on the horizon. A traveler in the Australian outback will spot a strange glow following them through the darkness. And each time it happens, the witnesses will wonder, just as people have wondered for decades or centuries before them. What am I looking at? What is this? We don't know. And that's the honest answer. We don't know. These lights remain one of nature's most persistent and baffling mysteries, a phenomenon that refuses to be categorized, explained, or dismissed. They're real, they're documented, they're repeatable, and they're completely unexplained. Perhaps that's what makes them so fascinating. In a world where we think we've figured out almost everything, these strange lights remind us that we haven't. Not even close.